they look at 3 to 4 vendors,
Yeah.
and 70% go with the first one that they contact. And that normally happens when they are nurturing, because they are nurturing the client is done right. So they're nurturing that customer and giving them all the stuff that they need, not selling to them, but really trying to understand what their challenges are, how they can help. They may not even be the right fit. The other 3 vendors, when they get contacted, think, "Manna from heaven, this is wonderful, we are here."
Mhm.
They do their demonstration and then wonder why the client suddenly disappears, and they can never get hold of that client ever again. Well, guess what? You were just part of the beauty parade. Hello, everyone. It's Reggie here again. Welcome to another It's Your Perspectives. It's a very sunny Friday afternoon, and I am delighted to be joined by the effervescent Mr. Phil Fryer Ward. Phil, hi. How are you?
Hi, good. Yeah, great. Thank you. And really good to be chatting to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So just by the way of background, I've known Phil for quite a number of years now, and we've worked together in this wild and wacky world of marketing, branding, design. And I think I know Phil fairly well, but I think it's important that Phil maybe tells all you wonderful people who he is and a little bit of background. Phil, fire away.
So, essentially, I'm what would traditionally be called a creative services specialist. So, that encompasses everything to do with marketing, branding, you name it, anything that supports a marketing organization. And I specialize in technology companies. I've worked for most of the big players in the service management industry and fintech and CRM as well. So a good range of clients across the years, both working on the vendor side and in running my own consultancy as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Phil. And really, I think we've come to this, there was a coming together. We had a number of conversations. We've worked on clients collectively, we collaborated on certain projects. And I think one of the more recent things that has been popping up on things like LinkedIn, and certainly you and I talked about it for quite some time, is that clients out there, they seem to be drowning, might not be the right term, but there's a lot of data out there. You know, it's been misused in many ways to sometimes create a de facto or a way forward. And it becomes very confusing for our clients because they see that as only kind of one way. So, but we could try and touch on some of those topics, really try and achieve a couple of things if we can. And the way this will probably go, probably from the experience that we have, good along for quite some time, but we want to try and leave people who are tuning into this with a few kind of areas, if we can, things to look out for, things to question, things to try and validate what you're being told. And maybe that's something that we come back to. But I envisage this to be a series of maybe, possibly 1 or 3 or something like that, because there's a lot of topics here. And this sea of data, this kind of thing, what has your experience been, Phil, if I may sort of kick off with that? And how do you kind of make sense of these kind of things you experience?
Yes. Well, obviously, a vast subject. I think one of the key things is that there are so many platforms, so many apps, so many tools that are now available in the marketplace for marketers. And all of those have their own dashboards and information that is available for marketers to use to usually align with, their own KPIs within an organization, or to ascertain how well they are doing with their objectives, with their marketing plans and the go-to-market strategy. But away from the marketing side, of course, this is all massively valuable to the business leaders as well. They want to know, in a nutshell, how things are performing, how the business is going, how sales is going, how marketing is going. And there's an app for everything, right? So you have all of these tools that are just bombarding the different layers of the organization and the management therein with all this information. And I guess the big question is how you make head or tail of that. What's right, what's wrong, and how do you get to the bottom of what you should be taking notice of, and which elements you should be using to improve the performance of any aspect of the organization, but in particular in the case of this discussion, the marketing side.
No, absolutely. And I think it's becoming, with the advent of, dare I use the term AI, but, we had to mention it in this conversation. There's even more data and it's even more confusing. I just put myself in the shoes of a CMO of a tech business. I wrote a piece previously, a blog post, which I think is very relevant to this, is that CMOs are already, I think it was Gartner data or Forrester data that said that the average tenure of a CMO is 40 months. And within that, which is not a huge amount of time, and equally, the role that they have has become very stretched. They're doing lots and lots of other things. There's lots of new things for them to learn, which is why they rely on sort of partners like ourselves. But in that mix, there seems to be number one, the pursuit of revenue, absolutely. But sometimes the pursuit of revenue at the cost of a longer term vision or a medium term vision. So I was just wondering, have you been in that scenario before where sometimes deep down inside the CMO knows deep down inside, but they're having a meeting with the board and they're saying, Phil, we really want to do all these different things, but the data's saying this. Have you had any sort of scenarios or anything you can share that sort of shines a light on that?
Absolutely. I think a classic example would be where there's lots of activities that are planned by, particularly if you have an incoming CMO, they want to do as many things as possible, as quickly as possible, given the tenure window that you're talking about. Obviously right off the bat, it's important for them to demonstrate an impact on the business and hopefully on lead flow and on ultimately on conversions. But I think a classic example is where, for example, if you imagine you're in one of these meetings and these things have just started and things seem to be going well, there's lots of activities going on, and that could be through, sort of paid advertising, social advertising, general SEO activities, which obviously is a longer term thing. But I think the key is that in one of these meetings, you may, for example, find that somebody's presenting a set of data that's saying that the website traffic has improved by, let's say, 30, 40%, which on paper looks fantastic. And I think the problem is, without any context, without any understanding, it's very hard to understand why that is happening. The core data and how it is interpreted from all these different sources, all the different apps that we were mentioning, is the key to understanding why that spike has happened. And of course, you may well have that 30%, 40% spike and no additional conversions, which is, not that unusual if you're doing lots of activity. So really getting to understand what that 30% represents and not just jumping to a conclusion about it being a fantastic thing, i.e., traffic is up, hooray, or 30% is up, but we don't have any extra conversions. It's a bad thing. Therefore, we must stop some of the activities we're doing, which we know from experience as professionals doing what we do is exactly the wrong thing to do. So I think it's critical in these kind of meetings where activities are happening and we're presenting all this myriad of data sources to particularly the C-level in the organization, that they don't just jump to conclusions based on those headline figures.
And that's a tough gig, because that you've hit the nail on the head. There's two things that really resonate with me. Number one, context that you said. But number two, the wrong thing to do is to that knee-jerk kind of thing. Well, look, we've had an increase in web traffic. Fantastic. How many sales have increased? And if you actually look at the what we call dark social, a lot of things that may be influencing the rise in that traffic in this scenario, these are things that not always things that one can actually count. So it could be something like this. Someone's watched a podcast. Someone's thought, this is really interesting. I want to see a bit more about what Phil does. So I'm not the designs this. So it's something your website traffic, but you would know that from somebody visiting your website, them sort of engaging with you, maybe looking at other aspects. That whole journey is a hell of a lot longer than people envisage. No one ever visits something that, the next day wakes up and says, well, I'm going to buy something.
As much as we may like them to do so.
Yeah, as much as you would. And I think those days have really, I don't think they ever existed, but people somehow have as kind of like, a hazy memory of like, all the summers used to be warmer when I was a child, sort of thing. They lasted longer, those lovely balmy school holidays and stuff like that. Well, the reality was, well, actually it wasn't, or it was, or whatever, but whatever the case is. But you're right. I think the big challenge for CMOs and for any marketing and sales guys and girls is that there's an immediacy for results. And though there is a result, it's understanding what those results mean. And I think Chris Walker summed it up perfectly, but who's the CEO, the former CEO of Refine Labs, who actually said marketing in today's world is kind of broken because people are still using old-fashioned techniques to kind of saying, look at all these things, or look at all these marketing qualified leads we've generated. Yes, but how long does it take for someone to make a decision in the buying process? And are they going to be talking to you? What happens after they visit the website? What do they do? Where do they go? What are the touch points that you have created? What are the brand channels that you take them to when they're doing their due diligence? Or are you just running Google ads? There's nothing using that linear approach never really achieves anything. And I think that's the big challenge. But as we say, how does one? I'd love to take I'd love to hear your take on that, and then obviously I'll share some of my own thoughts and some real world scenarios.
Yeah, I think one of the core things, I mean, we already touched on this idea that when you're getting a big spike in statistics and you're not seeing necessarily those conversions that everybody's talking about, that you absolutely should not stop what you're doing. It's a sign that things are working and you're reaching that wider audience, and you need to understand how you engage with them further to turn it into a proper lead. And I think one of the big issues that people need to remain aware of is how your brand is perceived in the market when you're doing these activities, and the fact that, how you're continuing these efforts in the longer term is what really matters. The experience that the people are having with your company as they touch in various different points in the greater marketing space. So be that on, a social platform or a website or whatever it is that you're doing to try and reach that audience.
Yeah.
Consistency is the word I always find myself saying, consistency of brand. And that is not just a logo. That's not, a tagline. Yes, that is a part of it. Your visual identity is a part of it, but it is more about the experience that a person has at every touch point with your organization. So the ads that they're looking at, the words that you're using, the tone of voice that you're using, the social posting that you're doing, and the consistency, there's that word again, that you have in what you're doing is absolutely critical. So it's not just about the consistency of the brand and the message that you're putting out there into the market. It's also about the consistency of that activity. I guess you can, of course, argue that if you were to turn off all your activity, then if your brand is super strong and you've been doing it the right way, then people remember it once that activity is turned off. But obviously that's only for a period of time before you start to degrade all that good work that you've been doing. So in a nutshell, I'd say consistency is key.
Absolutely. I don't think we'd be using the C word today, but yeah, consistency really is the name of the game. I think I've been lucky enough, having worked on certain projects where I've had access to buying committees within B2B organizations, and I've listened to and been privy to what they look for. And from the moment you were just describing that journey, just now about the people looking at, after that initial touch point, where do they go, consistency, everything else like that. We've always got to remember it's never just one person. So it could be I always use the term 10th person in a deal team who makes that initial contact to say, well, this is interesting. And then there's all these different people. Looking at data, again, from people like Gartner and various other places, they always talk about how that buying committee, it doesn't have to have that official name, but it could just be somebody who's a CIO in an organization or the head of IT or something who's evaluating a piece of software or need a new service. But they're talking to their user group, they're talking to their other directors, they're talking to some of their customers and various other things in terms of what they need. So that can be 3, 4, 5 people, and on a wider scale, it could be 40 people who are evaluating who they're going to use. The buyer is very much in control. And for me, when I've been lucky enough to sit and look at some of those buyer committees, if I could share that with some of those companies and how they're marketing themselves, they would totally change how they feel about brand. Because those touch points and those things that they see, not what the client sees. And they would totally turn around and understand that brand plays such a massive role in terms of confidence and where they're going to spend their hard-earned cash, in terms of all the things that they talk about. But as you rightly say, all the other sort of touch points are so vital. They are information hungry. They want to almost be, you need to get them almost enough information that they can make this, they can do their due diligence themselves. And really, you should be just facilitating or this kind of why sales organizations need to change as well. It's changing times. But you cannot, if you make an inquiry and say, I saw your stuff, your software, I'm really interested in it. What you don't want to do is once you request some information, is be bombarded for the next 10 emails saying, hey, you requested this thing and I'm just bumping this up the chain. Hey, buddy, not heard from me for a while. And just kind of ruining any prospect that you have because you think that's a lead. It's not a lead. It's an inquiry. It's an interest. It's probably maybe a false interest. And I'll just share very quickly some data from Sixth Sense that said that buyers look at normally, B2B buyers, depends on the size of the organization, but across the board, they look at 3 to 4 vendors.
Yeah.
And 70% go with the first one that they contact. And that normally happens when they are nurturing, because they are nurturing, the time is done right. So they're nurturing that customer and giving them all the stuff that they need, not selling to them, but really trying to understand what their challenges are, how they can help. They may not even be the right fit. The other 3 vendors, when they get contacted, think, manna from heaven. This is wonderful. We are here.
Mm-hmm.
They do their demonstration and then wonder why the client suddenly disappears. And they can never get hold of that client ever again. Well, guess what? It was just part of the beauty. When when you and I, when we talk to a customer and you expect a new client, I always hear the data said this, we should be getting more leads. Great. What happened? Well, we gave the demos, we did this, and okay. Yeah, how much are you investing in brand? What are you doing in brand? What are you doing in design? What are you doing on UX? What are you doing on all these different things? And it's when you realize, when you look at these buyer committees, it's the business they lose. It's not so much the opportunities that they're not winning. It's the business they lose. It's that loss of stuff they don't even know about before they even got to first base with these potential customers. So I think that's where the data tells a different story. You cannot just be data driven by just saying, hey, all our traffic came from this one source. Yeah, but where did that come from? Where did that one source? Is that data even right? I mean, this is blind faith, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think particularly on the brand side, there's always been, we as marketers, it's the kind of thing that is heard all the time, where brand building, if you like, is always attributed to data that is invisible, data that is not understood. So that 30% or 40% that we were talking about before, somebody somewhere in the organization will say, oh, well, it's brand building data. Therefore, the reason they haven't converted is because we're building the brand. And, the perception is that makes it expensive. And therefore the brand initiatives in terms of creating market impact is the most expensive thing you can do. The reality is not that. It's more about, as we were saying, understanding, where that growth has come from, whether you are reaching the right people, and therefore, how do you manipulate and remain agile enough in the activities that you are doing to be able to hone in on those people and get them to engage with you further, so that you understand more about them, you understand what their needs are, whether you have content or some kind of other facility within your activity, be it a webinar or a demo or something like that is going to resonate with that new pool of information that you can utilize. And I think it's also really important to understand, you were talking about the people who are reaching out and, heaven forbid, sending emails saying, just rising this up to the top of your inbox again, blah, blah, blah. I honestly have never engaged with an email like that, because you see it as what it is. It's a very kind of lazy approach to the sales process. But that also ties very neatly back into this whole discussion around branding, because those people should also be thinking about the brand, thinking about the voice, thinking about how it comes across to the person that they are reaching out to. Does it give them a memorable experience? Does it connect that email and that conversation with the brand in a positive way? If the answer to that is no, absolutely, it should not be going on. It sounds really obvious, but so many people do treat the brand experience as a logo, a top level message, and we're done kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the businesses who are wildly successful in this very confusing and oversaturated market are the ones who really focus on the complete experience. How does the customer see us at every touch point, and what makes us memorable? And data really gives an opportunity to remain agile and to adapt and mold the brand as you move forward. I'm fundamentally of the belief that a brand should not be locked down and rigid, so you can't do any of this stuff. It should be consistent, there's that word again, but importantly, you need to be able to adapt and mold the brand so that it works for the person who's needing to send emails to people. It works for people outside of just the marketing organization. And hey presto, if you do all of that, then somewhere down the line where you're not doing as much marketing for whatever reason, be it, end of year, budgets running a bit dry, whatever it is, you're still memorable. You still have a backlog of things that you've done already that you can push out there. They're going to resonate well, and that it's backed up by statistical knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, that's just a really, really powerful point. And I think it's a very important point, because this using data wisely, as you rightly say, helping to facilitate those people who are looking to engage with those customers, maybe, but it should be with a slightly different message, but it's so important. It's so important. And I think that if you can have that level of consistency, there it is again, consistency to have that focus on having the two side by side. And I think that that's a leadership thing internally within organizations. People need to be brave enough. Leaders need to be brave enough. The boards need to be brave enough to say, look, we are going down this route. We do have to invest in brand, because actually when you do look at those buyer committees, all you've got is brand. You've got no other thing. You've done some of that work. Maybe you woke up one day to buy your service, just type it into Google. There you go. They've probably been at it for quite some time, looking at and evaluating. The bigger the company, the longer the term. I think up to $250 million turnover businesses can take from the first touch point to any level of opportunity. I think it was 408 days, which is like That's interesting. That's well over 8 years. And it can be lost in 5 minutes. So
Absolutely.
it's all of those things and more. And when you going back to those people who to the buyers, the brand's the thing that they always think it's that essence of how it made them feel, that it's going to solve that problem or create an opportunity for them. And they trust that brand and the individuals within that, the face of that, and all the thought leadership pieces, all the blogs they've read, and the things and the perceptions that they've made up of that completely don't care. The logo is one part of the equation, but it's all those rich, deep, and wide elements where they've immersed themselves within that organization. They're almost visualizing working with that organization. Oh, that's almost aspirational in a way. To have and it comes down to this, it's what we've said before in the past, Phil, that it's never about, B2B or B2C. It's always about human to human connection. And it's equally the same as, I know you're a very keen cyclist, and I'm sure there've been times when you suddenly come across, I don't know, there is such a thing as a bike magazine anymore, or it's all online. But you look at something, you just go, oh my goodness, Lotus have just made this amazing, or whatever. I want that. And suddenly it's there. And you're visualizing, hurtling down, going through that sort of thing, and the experience of being on that bike, how it makes you feel, how exhilarating it is, and all the other things that go along with that, with the joy of that. And it's exactly the same as humans. We want to experience, we want to know that we're making, the old adage of no one ever got fired for buying IBM. It's because they built that trust. They invested so much equity in that brand. You're almost killing themselves. Bill Gates famously said, by the last $100 I invested in PR and branding. And it's so true. Not on a PPC ad. Though there is a place for that. No one does this. Yes, a chicken and not even a chicken and egg, but no one types that thing in. They'll look for something, but they'll go for the one that they trust. They'll go for that, and that's the one they'll go for.
Absolutely. I think if you look at branding as the backbone of the organization, with all the muscles and limbs and the rest of the skeleton all sort of working and operating off that, it's absolutely fundamental to the processes and the elements and all of those things working together and working as one. It sounds a crazy analogy, but that is exactly what it should be like. And in my experience, because over the years, particularly on the consulting side rather than the vendor side, I've worked with many high growth technology businesses. And of course, when you work in that kind of area, I've seen many buyouts. So other companies buying the company, or investment firms coming in and buying the company as well. And there's a reason that happens, and it is not just because of the product. It is because it is a recognizable brand that has brand equity, and it is that word you mentioned earlier, trust, is absolutely critical in that kind of scenario. So the market trusts the product, the people, and the feeling that they get from that organization. So time and again, I've seen, that in the marketplace, you get very passionate customers who would almost, march up the hill for the product that they're using. And I tell you now, it is not because the product is the best thing in the world. It is purely because of the perception of what that product means, what the people within the vendor organization are prepared to do for them as a customer. Their interactions with support, for example, their interactions with the product development team. It's all about this encompassing human interactive feeling. And because I joke, but I have seen people be that passionate about the ugliest products I've ever seen. Like we said before, brand is not about the look, if you like. Certainly in that case, people are very passionate and very attached and very driven to something that means something more. Interesting kind of segue into what we're really focusing on, which is data, of course. How you quantify that,
Yes.
that feeling, how you extrapolate those feelings and those passionate interactions into data that is then actionable is, the magic question. And of course, with all these apps and everything, you do get aspects of that data and that information that you can act upon. But again, it goes to that holistic view. And if you think about the brand as the backbone of the business, how do you get information from the fingertips and from the toes all the way through the network of the body to that backbone? And then enables you to enhance and adapt and create even more feeling towards the brand and more loyalty. Because as you mentioned already as well, with buying cycles lengthening rather than shortening, even with all this technology, you would sort of, in your natural response would be to say, well, it should be going the other way. But of course, with difficulties in, the financial situations that companies have, dare I mention the pandemic would, all these things that have happened that have made organizations risk averse, and therefore the buying cycle has, grown and extended out. And I think if we can harness the passion and the feeling that people have through statistics for a product or a brand in particular, then it enables us to, as marketers, enhance that, engage with them, encourage them through things like, user review programs and things like that, giving technology businesses, high customer ratings, satisfaction ratings. Of course, you're very much going into the realms of CX and the whole experience side of things. But all of those technologies, so the way that we measure things, the technologies that we use as marketers, but also the wider organization, the customer support angle of an organization, customer service as well. All of those technologies are actually, have been for many, many years converging. And I think it's important that as marketers, we don't just look at the dashboards that we're responsible for. We should be looking at the bigger picture, understanding all of those data sets, and hopefully using that information to enhance the brand, enhance customer loyalty, and create the nirvana of people understanding and wanting to do business with you before they even look at the product.
Yeah, no, 100%. I thought we'd try and wrap this up in 20 minutes. We're well over half an hour in, but I think there's some good bits here. And some of it, gosh, yeah, absolutely, that is the nirvana. But the consistency, trust, I probably add one other layer, authenticity. All of these things have to go, especially in this world of AI, you don't know what's real and what's not real sometimes. Sometimes the things that aren't real, tangible, non-physical, are actually sometimes a little bit better than the things that are real, believe it or not. But, hopefully you're not heading to this kind of iRobot type of bizarre kind of world. Maybe we are, who knows? Science fiction. But, Merriam-Webster said 2023 last year, it was the number one search for keyword, authentic. And it's almost that people are crying out for that. And this kind of sea of data, numbers, and everything else like that. If you can use that information, that data in the right way, as we both said, in context, and really get under the skin of it and use a bit of common sense to help shape your program, because the data is so useful. Having people with a level of experience, also the good old gut feeling of certain things to help you understand where things are going, then you're going to go a little bit further down the line. And all these things, you used a great analogy there about people marching up to top of the hill just for that product. People will go that extra mile if they feel that they are involved, if they feel that they are a part of it. Be it a car brand, a coffee brand, whatever, any type of business brand, that you're going to buy X switching gear because it always works. You're going to buy that laptop because it's X, Y, Z. You're going to buy that kind of thing. And it's the combination of data, right? The data that looks like what customers are doing, branding that makes sense of that. Yeah, so it's so there's lots of things to talk about, and I'm sure we're going to come back and talk about this again. So, Phil, thank you for that. That's been wonderful. Are there still bike magazines as such, or are they?
There are.
There's probably loads.
But yeah, it's mostly, as you can imagine, it's mostly online app based these days.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, lots of good content, and you're absolutely right. You do end up looking at it and going, oh yeah, I really see myself as aligning with that particular brand because of the experience, because of the way in which they present themselves as being,
Yes.
like me, I guess.
And maneuvering and using the tactics, your own personal branding tactics of how you're going to discuss it with your partner to allow yourself nothing. And there should be revenues going towards this, but you're veering towards
Yeah.
And unless they're keen like this, they're never going to get it. So it's never the torrential meat type of thing. The mammals that I know, the middle-aged men in Lycra, the stories that I've heard, the tactics that have been used to purchase this incredible book. I didn't know how expensive some of this stuff has come, and you just all the clogger and everything else that goes with it, that technical term clogger. It's just quite mind-boggling.
It is indeed.
But
my collection has gradually dwindled over the years to where it's sensible, shall we say.
Yes, yeah, indeed. That's the topic in itself. So listen, thank you very much, Phil. We'll be back. So, stay tuned. There's going to be some other episodes we're going to drill in. Send an email or send us a text or WhatsApp, or reach out on LinkedIn. If there's any other areas that we talked about that you'd like to drill in. But Phil, thank you so much. Look forward to having you on here again. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great chat.
Fantastic. Cheers.